Hi and welcome to the Beer Temple. I am Chris Quinn, and today I am following suit on a little bit of a trend for me. Certainly the style of beer that I find most intriguing and interesting that I've come across before this year, but really I've kind of focused on this year. Just my kind of personal interests, and that is some of these wild ales that aren't necessarily the most sour. I would say Brett beers more than sour beers. So, and that being also these are American artisanal, we'll call them, breweries. I will put Tired Hands in that category, Hill Farm, Prairie, Crooked Stave, which I've had on the show before this year, and Anchorage, which I don't believe I've had on the show before. So I wanted to bring in two more beers that I thought were interesting. The first is Anchorage Brewing from Anchorage, Alaska. And fairly new brewery. I believe they started within the last couple of years, maybe even as recently as 2012. And they specialize in Brettanomyces, fermentation, oak aging, stuff like that. And not just the typical bourbon barrels, although they do stouts and they do bourbon barrels and rye barrels and stuff like that, but also combination of barrels, you know, maybe more than one type of barrel per beer. This one is aged in Chardonnay barrels, and it's actually fermented in oak too. They ferment it in this beer. This is Bitter Monk. It's a Belgian double IPA with Brettanomyces, which is a wild yeast, and they ferment this beer in a large wooden tank, upright tank called a fooder. Then after the primary fermentation, they age it in oak, Chardonnay barrels, and then they dry hop it, I believe, in those barrels as well, and then they bottle condition it. So this beer is from May of this year. It is now September. So what is that, May? June, July, September. Yeah, so we're looking at like 3 months, but with these Brett beers, I feel, as Chase said on his the show where we had him on from Prairie, you know, it seems like with Brett beers, the hops seem to not fade out as quickly for some reason or another. So let's see. Certainly not an ancient beer. You should still get plenty of hoppy character here, and also, you know, well, the hops they use here, I think, are Apollo and Citra. So let's see. I've been very intrigued by these guys. I think the first I had of their beer was last year. I had a white IPA that they used with Galaxy hops. Very interesting beer. This beer pours fairly clear, nice golden color, with a big white fluffy head that's sticking around pretty well. Definitely getting some of that Brett in there. A little bit of a briny nose to it. It's kind of a pickly juice, but then also, you know, you might think I'm crazy, but if you smell from the top of the glass and the bottom of the glass, sometimes you get different notes on it. So I like to kind of move my nose around in there. At the top, I'm getting some more of that kind of creamy oakiness, probably from the Chardonnay barrels. And down here, I get more of that briny, pickly, but also bright hop nose as well. Still some wood. Yeah, kind of cool. A general kind of fruitiness to it as well. A lot going on here. What do you got here? Yeah. I do also I don't get a ton of Belgian character that I'm picking out on the nose. It's much more of that Brettanomyces earthiness. Some would say barnyard. It's not quite into the funky level yet, but it's a little earthy. I think that brininess is also from the Brett. And a really nice kind of apricot skin and pickle brine. I don't know if that sounds at all attractive, but it tastes pretty good. Interesting. Very much a Saison in style or in flavor that I would pick up on. A little fuller bodied, so it's not a bone dry Saison, which surprises me a little bit. Maybe there's just a slickness to the mouth. Maybe they added oats or something like that, and it is in fact bone dry, and it's just kind of tricking me, but it does have some heft to the mouth feel, which to me signifies a little bit of residual sugar. Quite hoppy. I get a little bit of a green, bordering on vegetative, but not quite. It's got an interesting, certainly a tannic note to it, a little bit of a tree sap quality to it, and that stuff can be highly tannic. It is, yeah, oaky, a hint of that cream that I got in the nose, but not quite as much. There is some significant hop bitterness as well, although it could just be that tannic kind of astringency drying out my tongue. Yeah, and kind of a fruitiness as well, a little bit of that apricot skin flavor too. Nice beer. I'm gonna go 89 with this beer. There's a lot going on. To me, it's not all working together. There's just so much going on to tie all that stuff in. The Belgian yeast, the dry hopping, the oak aging, the second oak, the oak fermenting, the oak aging, the Brett yeast. It's a lot going on. Certainly an intriguing beer, and one that if you're into this style is worth getting, but yeah, I would just like to see maybe something taken away from it to kind of elevate everything else, or something kind of adjusted. But who am I? That's just my personal preference. Interesting beer though, and one that I'm definitely glad that I tried. Okay. Next is Crooked Stave from Denver, Colorado. We've had them on before. Head brewer here, Chad Jacobson, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Specializes in Brettanomyces fermentation. I don't know if it's entirely Brettanomyces, but it's pretty darn close in terms of the yeast he uses. He uses a lot of different types of yeast, a lot of different types of Brettanomyces. There's many, many strains. Just like brewer's yeast, there's many different types of Brett yeast as well. And he's actually made some beers that I haven't had, but I've heard, you know, really are kind of dry, but you don't get a lot of that classic Brett flavor. You don't get a lot of that earth in it. He actually has gotten a lot of fruity character out of Brett in the past. Very, very interesting stuff that he's doing there. Very similar to Anchorage, just focusing a lot on wild yeasts, a lot on different cultures, and bacterial cultures and yeast cultures, and also, although he may be a cultured man, no pun intended, and a lot of barrel aging as well. So this is the hop Savant. I believe he has done a couple of these beers in the past. 100% Brett IPA, or Brett Saison, actually it is. I believe there's no bittering hop additions, so if you add beer early to the boil, it's going to result in bitterness. And if you add it later on, it's going to result in more aromatics and flavor. So 100% Brett, 100% late addition hops, and it is all Galaxy hopped as well, which is a Australian hop known very much for like a pineapple note. So we can see this here, a nice golden color. Interesting. Very much of a washed rind cheese thing here, like a really nice fresh washed rind cheese. It might be some cheesy hops. I don't know if he ages his hops, or these are old hops or what, or it's the Brett, probably a little bit of both. But it's like a nice washed rind cheese, maybe a funky little brie with some kind of fruit compote or something put on top of it. Very interesting. Much drier in the mouth. Much more what I would expect from something with all Brett. Brett can chew through more complex sugars than normal brewer's yeast can, so they tend to be more dry if given enough time. Very light, Not bitter at all, as expected, with no bittering hop addition. The oak, I think, yeah, fermented in oak again, but it's very mild oak note here. A little bit of like a woody note, but you're not getting any vanilla or caramel or anything like that that you would get from a bourbon barrel. And a nice effervescence. That cheesiness really was much more in the aroma than on the flavor. I'm getting much more of that tropical hop note. Pretty darn great. I'm gonna go with 94 on this one. I'm a big fan of this hop Savant. Not sure how fresh it is, unfortunately. Just says 2013. Really nice though. Certainly glad that I picked this one up. Cool. I want to try some more of the Crooked Stave stuff. If you guys are ever out in Denver, stop on by and get some of this stuff. Yeah, pretty solid. So we got what, 89, 94? Not too shabby. Thank you guys. As always, check us out on Facebook. Leave a comment on the site, please. If you like the show, do me a favor, either leave a review on iTunes or leave a comment on the site. They both mean a lot to me and actually help out the show. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate that very, very much. That's it, guys. Until next time, I've got some really great cutting-edge American beers to drink, and hopefully you do too. And if you don't, go out and find some. Cheers.